Hey guys, tonight we are going to do something a little different. We're not just going to talk about history, we're going to step into it. Specifically, we're taking a one-way trip to the late 17th century, to the most dazzling, most opulent, and frankly, most overrated palace in the world, Versailles. You've just received the invitation of a lifetime, a summons from the Sun King himself. But be warned, behind the shimmering gold leaf and dendus mirrors lies a reality so grimy. You'll be thankful for your modern plumbing. Honestly, you might not survive the first day with your dignity or your sense of smell intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Drop your city and the time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air in your family's provincial chateau is thick with the familiar scent of beeswax, damp stone, and your mother's rose garden just outside the window. Life here is a gentle, predictable rhythm. The days are marked by the sun's passage across the worn tapestries in the main hall, and the seasons by the changing colors of the vineyards that stretch across your family's lands. It's a comfortable existence, respectable, but far from the epicenter of power and culture that is the king's court. You've heard the stories, of course, whispers of the palace Louis XVI has built, a monument to himself, a golden city where the fortunes of France's great families are made and broken with a single glance from the monarch. It all feels like a fairy tale, something read from a book, not a place a person actually goes. Then, one dusty Tuesday afternoon, the fairy tale gallops up your driveway. A royal messenger, his horse lathered and his tunic bearing the faint fleur-de-lis of the king, dismounts with a stiff formality that feels alien in your quiet courtyard. He presents a letter to your father. It's not just a letter, it's an object of immense weight and significance. The parchment is heavy, almost creamy to the touch, and sealed with a deep blue wax bearing the unmistakable, intricate royal crest. Your father's hand trembles slightly as he breaks the seal. The silence in the room is absolute as his eyes scan the elegant, looping script. Your mother holds her breath. You find yourself studying the dust motes dancing in the afternoon sun, anything to avoid looking at your father's face, which is slowly losing all its color. Finally, he looks up, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and elation. It's from the king, he whispers, as if saying it too loudly might shatter the moment. He requests, he summons, our daughter to be presented at court. And just like that, your world tilts on its axis. An invitation to Versailles isn't merely a social opportunity, it's a command. To refuse is unthinkable, an insult the king would not forget. Historians still debate the true nature of these summons. Was it a reward for loyalty and a genuine honor, or a gilded leash, a calculated political move by Louis XVI to uproot the powerful regional nobility and bring them to Versailles where he could keep them under his constant watchful eye for your family? The distinction is academic. You have been chosen. You must go. Panic, thinly veiled as excitement, descends upon the household. This is the single greatest honor your family has ever received, and also its greatest financial crisis. Life at court is ruinously expensive. New gowns must be sewn from silks and velvets you can't afford. Lace must be ordered from Brussels, and a new traveling carriage must be commissioned. Your father begins selling off parcels of land almost immediately. This is the reality of absolutism, the immense pressure on the nobility to maintain a facade of wealth, often bankrupting themselves just to stay in the king's orbit. The weeks leading up to your departure are a blur of frantic activity. You stand for hours as seamstresses prick you with pins, their mouths full of them as they mutter about the latest court fashions. You pack trunks with everything you own, though you have a sinking feeling it will all be laughably provincial once you arrive. You say your goodbyes, and there is a genuine fear in your mother's eyes. She is sending you into a world she doesn't understand, a glittering labyrinth from which many never truly return. The journey itself is a lesson in the realities of 17th century life. The carriage, for all its new paint and velvet cushions, is brutally uncomfortable. It lurches and sways on roads that are little more than deeply rutted dirt tracks. You learn to brace yourself with every jolt. A fascinating and rather unpleasant tidbit of the era is that carriage suspension was, to put it mildly, a work in progress. It consisted of leather straps, which offered all the shock absorption of a wooden plank. Every bump in the road travels directly up your spine. The days are long and monotonous, broken only by stops at squalid inns where the food is questionable and the beds are likely home to more than just you. As you get closer to Paris, the traffic increases a slow, lumbering procession of carts, horses, and other carriages, all seemingly crawling towards the same destination. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of being jostled and bruised, your driver points to the horizon, and you see it. It's just a glint at first, a flash of gold in the distance, but it grows larger and more defined with every turn of the wheels. It's not a building. It's a golden sunrise, frozen on the horizon. It's Versailles, and it's waiting for you. The glint on the horizon resolves itself, not into a single building, but into a sprawling complex of impossible scale. The carriage trundles through a final stretch of manicured forest, the trees planted in unavailing perfect straight lines. And then you're there, entering the vast, multi-layered courtyards that lead to the palace proper. The sheer size of it is a physical blow. You've seen cathedrals, you've seen castles, but this is something else entirely. This is a city built for a god, and you're approaching the central temple. The architecture is designed to do exactly what it's doing to you right now: to humble, to intimidate, and to overwhelm. It's a flex. Plain and simple. Your carriage rattles over the cobblestones of the Cour d'Humru, the main courtyard, and comes to a stop in a designated line of other, far more ornate vehicles. A footman, a stranger hired for the occasion, opens your door. For a moment, you just sit there, frozen. The sunlight reflecting off the endless windows and gold leaf detailing is almost blinding. You take the offered hand and step down onto the ground, your thin leather shoes feeling flimsy on the unforgiving stone. You stand there, a small, provincial figure in a sea of overwhelming grandeur. The facade of the palace stretches out before you, an endless, symmetrical masterpiece of cream-colored stone, marble, and bronze. Hundreds of windows stare down at you like indifferent eyes. The roof is a forest of sculptures, urns, and ornate dormers, all culminating in the central block where the king's own apartments are located. This central section, the oldest part, is built of brick and stone, a deliberate choice by Louis to honor his father's original hunting lodge. But it's been so enveloped by the new, grander wings that it almost seems quaint by comparison. The scale is intentionally dehumanizing. Historians today still argue about Louis XIV's primary motivation for this colossal project. Was it purely a manifestation of his artistic passion and his self-image as the Sun King, a divinely appointed ruler who deserved a home to match, or was it a more cynical, brilliant political strategy, a gilded cage designed to lure the powerful nobles away from their regional power bases, forcing them to spend their fortunes on fashion and lodging here at court, rendering them dependent and politically impotent standing here, feeling your own insignificance? You suspect the latter might be closer to the truth. You feel less like an honored guest and more like a moth being drawn to a very expensive flame. You look around at the other arrivals. It's a river of silk, satin, and powdered wigs. Men in high-heeled shoes with enormous red heels, a status symbol indicating they have been presented at court, stroll by, their canes tapping a rhythmic beat. Women with hairstyles piled so high they look like elaborate, sugary sculptures glide past, their faces painted into masks of serene indifference. You instinctively smooth down your own dress, which felt like the height of fashion back home but now seems hopelessly plain. It's a bit like showing up to the Met Gala in your high school prom dress. Here's a little detail they don't tell you in the history books: the logistics of this place were a nightmare. The palace has over 2,000 windows. Think about cleaning them. It was a constant, Herculean task for an army of servants. And here's the kicker: many of the grand windows in the state apartments were permanently sealed shut. They were there for symmetry in the external look, not for something as mundane as ventilation. The appearance of perfection was far more important than the comfort of the people inside. The air buzzes with a strange, controlled energy. It's not the chaotic noise of a city, but a low hum of hushed conversations, the rustle of expensive fabric, the clatter of horses' hooves in the distance, and the sharp commands of the Swiss guards in their striking red, white, and blue uniforms. Everyone is performing. Every glance, every nod, every slight turn of the head is calculated and observed. You are on the grandest stage in Europe, and you don't even know your lines yet. A man in a sober black coat, a minor court functionary by the look of him, detaches himself from the wall and approaches you. He has a list on a clipboard, a surprisingly modern-looking device for the air and a weary expression. He doesn't smile. He simply finds your name, ticks it off, and gestures with his head towards a smaller, less ostentatious door to the side of the main entrance. Your rooms are in the north wing, he says, his voice fat and devoid of welcome. Your maid may attend you. Be ready for the evening presentation. He turns and walks away before you can even formulate a question. Your maid? A young girl from your village who looks even more terrified than you feel, scurries to your side, clutching a small bag of your personal effects. The grand trunks will be brought up later, by someone else. You take a deep breath, trying to steady your nerves. You've seen the outside, the glorious, golden shell. Now it's time to see what's inside the cage. You follow the path towards the indicated door, the crunch of the manicured gravel beneath your feet sounding unnaturally loud in your own ears. With every step, you feel the familiar world of your provincial home slipping further and further away. You are no longer just the daughter of a nobleman. You are now a courtier, and you are about to discover what that truly means. You follow the curt functionary's gesture, moving away from the dazzling main facade and towards the less glamorous north wing. The sheer scale of the palace means that this side entrance is still larger and more ornate than the front of any building you've ever entered before. Yet, as you step through the doorway and into the labyrinthine corridors, the gilded illusion begins to peel away at the edges. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It's not one specific scent, but a complex, layered assault on your senses. You expected perfume. You expected the scent of floor wax and old tapestries. What you get is something far more organic. There's an underlying dampness, a musty odor of stone that never quite sees the sun. But woven to it is something else, or something sharp and acrid. It's the unmistakable, eye-watering tang of stale urine. It seems to cling to the very walls, a ghostly miasma that no amount of aristocratic polish can fully disguise. You try not to react, to keep the serene, composed mask on your face that you saw on the other ladies. But the corridors are grand, impossibly high ceilings. Marble floors, walls intermittently hum with enormous paintings of forgotten battles and stern festas, but they are also dark and surprisingly crowded. It's a chaotic flow of human traffic, servants rushing past with armfuls of linen, priests in their dark cast sulks, soldiers carrying messages, and nobles ambling along in small, gossiping clusters. They all share this space, and they all seem completely oblivious to the smell. It's just part of the atmosphere, like the humidity in a swamp. Here's a fact that modern minds struggle with. The Palace of Versailles, for all its splendor, was built with a shocking lack of toilet facilities. There were no public restrooms. The king and a few very high-ranking royals had a chaise posée, or a pierced chair, essentially a commode. A chair with a chamber pot built into it, for the thousands of other courtiers, servants, and visitors milling about. The options were grim. You had to have your own personal chamber pot, carried by a servant, or you had to find a secluded spot. The grand staircases, the dark corners of hallways, the ornate gardens, even the fireplaces, they were all fair game. The palace staff did their best to clean, but it was a losing battle against thousands of people living in close quarters. You keep your head held high, focusing on the intricate patterns of the marble underfoot, trying to regulate your breathing so you're taking shallow sips of air. You pass a grand antechamber where a group of men are gambling at a small table, their powdered wigs bobbing as they laugh. One of them looks up, his gaze sweeping over you with a detached, evaluated air, like a farmer inspecting livestock. You quickly look away, your cheeks flushing. You are on display, and you are being judged by everyone. A strange and slightly gross tidbit from this era is the court's fascination with digestion and bodily functions, something that seems utterly at odds with their obsession with etiquette. It was not uncommon for nobles to discuss the state of their bowels quite openly. The king himself had a very public relationship with his own digestive system. His daily bowel movement was a quasi-medical event, attended by his physician and noted for the record. The state of the royal stool was considered a matter of national importance. It's a bizarre contradiction, a society that would faint at the sight of a lady's ankle, but would happily chat about laxatives over dinner. As you walk, you notice the details you'd miss in a painting. The corners of the corridors are grimy, filled with dust and unforgettable debris. A dog, one of the many pampered pets that run the palace free, trots past, sniffing at a dark stain on the floor. In a dimly lit alcove, you see a servant discreetly emptying a bucket of slop water out of a window into the courtyard below. The palace was a living, breathing, and frankly, excreting organism. This dissonance between the opulent ideal and the squalid reality is a constant source of debate for historians. Some argue that our modern obsession with hygiene makes us unfairly judge the past. For the people of the 17th century, they argue, this level of dirt and smell was simply the norm, an accepted part of life that they were far less sensitive to. Others contend that while they may have been more accustomed to it, they were not oblivious. The sheer volume of perfume, pomades, and scented powders used at court suggests a constant, desperate battle to mask the underlying reality. You, standing in this hallway, smelling what you're smelling, are inclined to agree with the second group. This isn't normal, it's a problem they're trying to cover up with rosewater. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of walking down identical-looking corridors, the functionary stops at a plain wooden door, barely distinguishable from the dozens you've already passed. He doesn't even look at you. He just points. This is it. And with that, he's gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall, leaving you and your bewildered maid standing alone in the smelly, intimidating grandeur of Versailles. You had arrived, but you have a sinking feeling that the golden invitation didn't quite tell the whole story. The real test is about to begin. You push open the heavy oak door, your heart a nervous flutter. Behind it must lie your new home, your personal sanctuary within this overwhelming golden city. The reality, however, is a swift and brutal disappointment. The room is tiny. Calling it a room feels generous, it's more of a cell. A stone box carved out of the palace's massive infrastructure. The one small, mullioned window is set high in the wall, offering a depressing view of a slate roof and a sliver of grey sky. There is no fireplace. The air is immediately, shockingly cold and damp, penetrating chill that seems to emanate from the stone walls themselves. The space is dominated by a narrow bed, shrouded in heavy, dark curtains. This isn't for privacy, you realize, but for a desperate attempt to trap body heat during the frigid nights. Versailles was notoriously difficult to heat. Only the most senior royals had apartments with multiple fireplaces. For the vast majority of courtiers, like you, winter at the palace was a miserable, shivering affair. Stories abound of wine freezing in the glass during dinner parties and even the grander apartments. Your provincial chateau, with its roaring hearths and thick, draught-excluding tapestries, suddenly seems like the pinnacle of luxury. Against the far wall, there's a single wooden stool, a small chest for your clothes, and a washstand holding a porcelain basin and a matching pitcher. That's it. No wardrobe, no writing desk, no comfortable chair. This is your entire world. Your maid, whose name is Cecile, looks even more crestfallen than you feel. Her sleeping quarters will be a simple straw pallet on the floor at the foot of your bed. The starkness of it all is a physical shock. You are a guest of the king, a member of the nobility. Yet your lodgings are more Spartan than those of the senior servants back home. This was the reality for most of the court. The palace was a machine, and you were a clog. Your comfort is not a priority, your presence is. Louis XIB wanted the nobility close, but he wasn't necessarily concerned with making them comfortable. The distribution of rooms was a brutally clear indicator of your status. The closer you were to the king's own apartments, the more important you were. Being assigned a room in the far-flung north wing, with no fireplace and a view of a roof, is a clear and public statement of your current place in the pecking order, the very bottom. A fascinating and slightly absurd detail about these rooms is that many of them were created by subdividing larger, grander spaces. A duke might have a spacious apartment, but when he fell out of favor, his rooms could be crudely partitioned with thin walls to create 3 or 4 smaller cubicles for lesser nobles. You might literally be sleeping in what was once a powerful man's closet. This led to a constant state of construction and a strange architectural layout where corridors led to nowhere and rooms had bizarre, illogical shapes. Historians are still piecing together the exact floor plans and room assignments of this era, as they changed so frequently. The allocation of lodging was a fluid and viciously political game. Did a favored duchess need an extra room for her seamstress? A minor baron might find himself suddenly homeless, his belongings piled in the hallway, because his space was reallocated. The constant anxiety over losing your room was just one of the many stresses of court life. It was a physical manifestation of the phrase climbing the social ladder. You were literally trying to secure a better room, one step closer to the sun. Cecile wordlessly begins to unpack the few things you brought with you. She pours some water from the pitcher into the basin. It's icy cold. There's no running water, of course. Old water, for washing, for drinking, had to be hauled by servants from the palace's wells and cisterns, carried up endless flights of stairs. You'd dip your fingers in it and recoil slightly. This is what you're used to wash your face in the morning. Use it on the edge of the stiff, unyielding bed. The fabric of your traveling dress feeling heavy and grimy. The silence in the room is broken only by the faint, distant sounds of the palace afar-off bell. The indistinct murmur of voices from the corridor. The scrape of a chair on the floor of the room above. It feels profoundly lonely. You are surrounded by thousands of people, yet you feel completely isolated in this cold stone box. You think back to the invitation, the heavy parchment, the royal seal. It promised glamour, power, and proximity to the king. It didn't mention the freezing cold, the claustrophobic space, or the profound sense of being utterly insignificant. This is the first and most important lesson of Versailles. The glittering facade is just that, a facade. Behind it is a rigid, uncomfortable, and deeply competitive reality. Your worth here is not determined by your character or your intelligence, but by your title, your wealth, and your proximity to the throne. Your tiny, cold room is your starting point. From here, the only way to go is up a journey that will require cunning, ruthlessness, and a complete reinvention of yourself. For now, though, you just have to figure out how to survive the night without freezing. You pull your shawl tighter around your shoulders and listen to the sounds of the golden cage settling around you. Surviving your first evening at Versailles is less about comfort and more about observation. Cecile helps you change out of your travel-worn clothes and into the best gown you own. It's a deep blue silk that seemed the height of elegance back home. But here, under the scrutinizing gaze of the court, you feel a fresh wave of insecurity before you leave your tiny room. Cecile gives you a final piece of advice, her voice a nervous whisper. My lady, walk slowly, and do not speak unless you are spoken to. You step back out into the river of courtiers flowing through the corridors. This time, you're not just passing through, you are trying to become part of the current. The destination is the king's state apartments, where the evening's social rituals will unfold. Everyone is moving in the same direction, a slow, rustling procession of silken jewels. The air is thick with a cacophony of perfumes, a desperate floral attempt to conquer the palace's persistent underlying odors. You learn the first unwritten rule of Versailles: everything is a performance of status. The way a man bows, the angle of his back, the sweep of his hat, it all communicates his rank relative to the person he is greeting. A duke barely inclines his head to a baron, while the baron practically folds in half. Women perform a complicated curtsy, a reverence, sinking to the floor in a cloud of fabric. The depth and duration of the curtsy are minutely calibrated to the rank of the person being honored. You practice a small, tentative one when a stern-looking duchess glides past, hoping you got it right. She doesn't even acknowledge your existence. It's a brutal, instant feedback system. You find a spot along the wall in one of the antechambers, trying to make yourself as small as possible while still observing everything. This is the world of para-it-rai, the art of appearing. It's not about who you are, but who you appear to be. Your expression must be one of serene, pleasant neutrality. Too much smiling looks foolish. Too much frowning looks critical. You are aiming for a look of polite, detached interest, as if you belong here completely, even though your insides are churning with anxiety. A key piece of the court's complex social code was the droit de tabouret, the right of the stool. In the presence of the king or queen, almost everyone was required to stand. Only a very small number of high-ranking duchesses were granted the right of the stool, allowing them to sit on a simple, backless stool. It was one of the most coveted privileges at court, and the source of endless jealousy and intrigue. To be able to sit down was the ultimate status symbol. Watching the chosen few take their seats while hundreds of others stand for hours gives you a very clear, visual map of the power structure. You watch as people greet each other. They don't shake hands, they exchange kisses near the cheek, their powdered faces never touching. Their conversations are a quiet murmur, a sotto voce hum of gossip and pleasantries. You strain to hear snippets. They speak of who is in favor with the king, who has been granted a new pension, and whose outrageous gambling debts are the talk of the court. It's a constant, low-grade information war, and you are currently unarmed. A slightly bizarre and debated aspect of court etiquette involved doors. The manner in which one was allowed to knock on a door was dictated by rank. A high-ranking noble could knock with their knuckles. A lesser courtier, however, was expected to scratch at the door with the little finger of their left hand, which they often grew long for this specific purpose. Historians still discuss how widespread this practice actually was. Was it a formalized, universal rule, or an exaggerated anecdote that became legend? Standing here, seeing the almost fanatical attention paid to other trivial details, you wouldn't be surprised if it weren't true. It fits the pattern, turning a simple, mundane act into a complex ritual of humiliation and status display. Then, a ripple of movement flows through the crowd. A hush falls. A path through the sea of people opens as if by magic. The king is about to pass through. You feel a surge of panic. This is it. You press yourself flatter against the wall, trying to become part of the tapestry behind you. Louis XIV enters the room. He is not a tall man, but the high red heels on his shoes and the sheer force of his presence make him seem immense. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace, his face an unreadable mask of divine authority. His gaze sweeps the room, a brief, impersonal glance that seems to take in everyone and no one at the same time. As he passes, everyone in his path performs a deep, synchronized bow or curtsy. You sink down, your knees trembling, your eyes fixed on the polished floor. You hold the position until he has passed, the scent of his unique, orange blossom perfume lingering in the air. You rise slowly, your legs shaky. You did it. You survived your first royal encounter. He didn't see you. Not ready. You were just part of the scenery, a face in the crowd. And in that moment, you understand the fundamental bargain of life at Versailles. You trade your autonomy, your comfort, and your identity for the slim chance of being noticed, of catching the king's eye and having his favor shine upon you, even for a fleeting moment. It's a dangerous game, played with unwritten rules in a golden labyrinth, and you've only just learned how to take the first step. The next morning, the sun's weak rays barely penetrate the grime on your single window, and the chill in the room is bone deep. Cecile is already up, her breath misting in the air as she moves about the small space. It's time for your toilet, the formal, hours-long ritual of dressing and preparing for the day. But first comes the matter of personal hygiene, 17th century style. Cecile pours the icy water from the pitcher into the basin. There's no soap as you know it, just a small, rustling cloth. This is your morning bath. You splash the frigid water on your face and hands. The idea of a full-body bath, of immersing yourself in hot water, is a foreign concept here. In fact, it was viewed with suspicion. The prevailing medical theory of the time, inherited from the Middle Ages, held that water could open the pores and allow diseases, or miasmas, to enter the body. Hot water was considered particularly dangerous. Therefore, full immersion bathing was rare. Something done perhaps a few times a year, often for medicinal purposes rather than for cleanliness. The Sun King himself is said to have taken only a handful of full baths in his entire life. So, how did they stay clean, or rather, how did they approximate cleanliness? The primary method was the one you're experiencing now, toilet sèche, or dry cleaning. You take the linen cloth, dip it in the cold water, perhaps scented with a bit of vinegar or rosemary for its supposed antiseptic properties, and give yourself a brisk rub down. You scrub your face, your neck, your underarms. This removes the surface layer of grime and sweat. But it's more of a rearrangement of dirt than a true cleansing. The real focus of hygiene was on the parts of the body that were visible: your face, your hands, and your linen. This is a key detail. A wealthy person's cleanliness was judged not by the state of their skin, but by the state of their linge blank, their white linen. You wore a long linen shift, or chemise, as the base layer against your skin. This was changed daily, or even multiple times a day if you were very rich. The theory was that the clean linen would wick the impurities away from the body. So, you might have a dirty body, but you had a sparkling clean chemise. It was a system built on appearances, just like everything else at Versailles. A rather curious and niche hygiene practice of the era involved cleaning your teeth. While some people did use early forms of toothbrushes made from horsehair bristles, a more common method was to use a rough cloth, sometimes dipped in a powder made of things like crushed coral, brick dust, or soot. These abrasive mixtures might have scrubbed away some plaque, but they also would have stripped the enamel from the teeth over time. Another popular mouth-cleaning agent was a rinse made of wine or vinegar. It's no wonder that dental health was abysmal and to floss was common, even among the young. As Cecile helps you into your fresh linen chemise, the crisp, clean fabric does feel refreshing against your skin. It's a temporary illusion of cleanliness, a starched white lie you tell the world. The rest of the toilet is about adding layers, not taking them away. There's no deodorant. The primary method for combating body odor is to cover it up. Cecile takes a small pouch filled with dried herbs and flowers, lavender, rose petals, and cloves, and tucks it into the bodice of your dress. These scented sachets were a personal form of air freshener. The historical debate around this topic is fascinating. Were people in the 17th century simply nose-blind to smells that would overwhelm us today? Did they genuinely not notice the pervasive body odor, the stench of the hallway, the lack of sanitation, or were they acutely aware of it, and their entire culture of perfume, scented powders, and clean linen was a direct and desperate response to a smelly reality? The sheer amount of money and effort spent on fragrances suggests the latter. They weren't oblivious they were fighting a losing battle with perfume as their primary weapon. You look at your reflection in the small, polished metal mirror on the washed sand glass mirrors. Worse, mirrors were still incredibly expensive and reserved for the grand halls. Your face is clean, or at least clean enough by the standards of the court. Your body, however, is encased in a growing collection of layers: the linen chemise, the scented sachet, and soon, the corset. the panniers, and the heavy silk gown. It's a process of construction, of building a beautiful facade over a foundation that is never truly, deeply clean. You are now ready for the next, and far more dangerous, stage of the morning ritual, the application of makeup. Cecile sets out a series of small porcelain pots on the washstand. They look innocent enough, filled with white powders and red pastes. But you are about to paint your face with poison. This isn't just about looking pretty. This is about conforming to a very specific, very demanding ideal of beauty. An ideal that could, quite literally, kill you. The morning bath was a fiction of cleanliness, but the morning makeup will be a dance with death. The ritual of the toilet now moves to its most critical phase, creating the mask. At the court of Versailles, beauty wasn't about looking natural, it was about looking artificial, like a porcelain doll. The ideal was a face untouched by sun or age, smooth, flawless, and starkly white canvas. And to achieve this, you must turn to the most prized cosmetic of the era, Venetian cerus, also known as spirits of Saturn. Cecile opens a small, ornate porcelain pot. Inside is a dense, white, creamy paste. This is the cerus. It has a heavy, slightly metallic scent. She takes a small brush and begins to paint it onto your face. The feeling is strange. It's thick and cool on your skin, like a layer of plaster. She applies it evenly across your entire face, your neck, and your décolleté. Anywhere your skin will be exposed. The goal is to completely obliterate your natural skin tone, to erase any freckles, blemishes, or signs of life, and replace them with a uniform, aristocratic pallor. What you don't know, but perhaps suspect from the way it makes your skin tingle, is that Venetian cerus is almost pure white lead carbonate. It is a deadly neurotoxin. You are literally slathering your face with poison. Lead was a known poison, of course, but the connection between its cosmetic use and the slow, creeping illness that followed was not fully understood, or perhaps was willfully ignored in the name of beauty. The immediate effects are desirable. The lead paint fills in pores and small wrinkles, creating a miraculously smooth surface. It gives your skin a luminous, pearly finish that catches the candlelight beautifully. This is why it was so popular. It worked, but the long-term effects were catastrophic. The lead is absorbed through the skin, and with daily use, it begins its slow, destructive work on the body. It causes skin to grey and shrivel, creating a vicious cycle where more and more cerus is needed to cover the damage it has caused. It leads to hair loss, severe abdominal pain known as painter's colic, muscle paralysis, and neurological damage. Eventually, it can lead to a painful, protracted death. Every woman at court, from the highest-ranking duchess to a newcomer like you, is slowly poisoning herself in the pursuit of a fashionable face. Historians often point to the story of Maria Coventry, the Countess of Coventry, a famous 18th century beauty. As a cautionary tale, she was celebrated for her stunning looks, which were heavily dependent on her use of white lead. She died at the age of 27, a victim of what was almost certainly lead poisoning from her makeup. Her death was a public scandal, but it did little to curb the use of the deadly cosmetic. The pressure to conform was simply too great. As Cecile finishes applying the white base, you look in the mirror. An unnerving stranger stares back at you. Your face is a blank, white oval. Your features slightly blurred under the thick layer of paint. It's unsettling, but this is the required foundation. This is the face of nobility. A curious and lesser-known fact about this lead face is how it affected social interactions. Because the cerus was applied as a thick, mask-like paste, it was prone to cracking. Any extreme facial expression, a wide smile, a hearty laugh, a deep frown could cause the smooth facade to fracture, revealing the natural skin beneath. This is one of the debated reasons for the famously reserved and neutral expressions of the aristocracy. Was their legendary composure a sign of emotional discipline, Or was it a practical necessity to keep their makeup from cracking? It's a fascinating thought that an entire class of people adopted a stoic demeanor simply to keep their faces from falling apart. The debate continues. But it adds a layer of tragicomedy to the stiff portraits of the era. You sit perfectly still, allowing the lid paint to dry. It feels tight on your skin, like a mask that is slowly hardening. The smell is cloying, and you already feel a faint, dull headache beginning to form behind your eyes. But you don't dare complain. You look around the court and see that every other woman has the same ghostly, powdered pillar. It's the uniform. To appear with a natural, healthy, sun-kissed complexion would be a sign of being provincial, of working in the fields. It would be a social death sentence. So you embrace the poison. You accept the white mask as your new face. It is the first and most important layer of the artifice you must construct to survive here. It hides your true skin, your true emotions, and your provincial origins. But as you stare at the blank, doll-like face in the mirror, you can't help but wonder what the cost of wearing this mask will be. You are erasing yourself, molecule by toxic molecule, to become a work of art. And you're beginning to understand that at Versailles, art is beautiful, but it is also cruel. With the deadly white canvas of your face now set, it's time to add a touch of life, or at least the fashionable imitation of it. A pale face was a sign of aristocracy, but a completely stark white face suggested illness and death. The ideal was to have the pallor of a noble who never sees the sun, combined with the rosy, flushed cheeks of a healthy, fertile young woman. It was a contradiction, and like all contradictions at court, it was solved with artifice. Cecile opens another small, elegant pot. This one contains a vibrant, crimson-red paste. This is your rouge. She takes a small puff of cotton or a scrap of silk, dabs it into the pot, and begins to apply it to your cheeks. The style is not as subtle, blended blush as you might think. It is a bold, deliberate statement. She applies to perfect, round circles of red high on your cheekbones. There is no attempt to make it look natural. The effect is intentionally doll-like, a stark contrast against the ghostly white of the lead paint. This rouge, like the white lead foundation, is beautiful, fashionable, and incredibly dangerous. While some less expensive rouges were made from plant extracts, like safflower or sandalwood, the most vibrant, desirable, and long-lasting shades came from a far more toxic source, cinnabar. Cinnabar is a mineral ore, and its primary component is mercury sulfide. You are now dabbing a known toxin onto the poison you've already applied. It's a toxic cocktail for the sake of rosy cheeks. Mercury, like lead, is absorbed through the skin. Its effects are insidious and horrifying. It attacks the central nervous system, leading to tremors known as hatter's shakes. From its use in the felt-making industry, memory loss, irritability, and severe depression. It also had a devastating effect on the mouth, causing teeth to loosen and fall out, and gums to rot and recede. The image of a beautifully made-up noblewoman smiling to reveal a mouth blackened, rotting teeth is not an exaggeration. It was a common reality. You are literally trading your smile for the appearance of a blush. As Cecile applies the rouge, you can feel a slight burning sensation where it touches your skin. It's a common reaction, a sign that the mercury is already starting to irritate the delicate tissue of your face. But you don't flinch. You watch as the perfect red circles transform your face. You no longer look like a ghost, you look like an expensive, exquisitely painted toy. The effect is striking. You look healthy, vibrant, and alive, even if the ingredients used to create this illusion are slowly killing you. A curious, and rather tragic, detail about the use of these cosmetics is their effect on the eyes. Both lead and mercury could cause severe eye inflammation and vision problems. Furthermore, to make their eyes appear brighter and more dramatic against the pale skin, women would often use eye drops made from belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade. Belladonna contains atropine, which dilates the pupils, creating a wide-eyed, captivating look. It was considered alluring and mysterious. The downside, it causes blurred vision, an inability to focus on close objects, and with prolonged use, can lead to permanent blindness. Imagine a room full of beautiful women, their faces painted with lead and mercury, their pupils dilated with poison, stumbling about because they can barely see. It's a scene of high fashion and high force. The precise recipes for these cosmetics were often closely guarded secrets, passed down through families or sold by apothecaries and perfumers. Were these women completely unaware of the dangers? This is a topic of ongoing historical discussion. The cause and effect was certainly not as clear as it is to us. A woman might suffer from headaches, rotting teeth, and tremors, but she would attribute it to a nervous condition, bad humors, or divine will, not to the little pot of red paste on her dressing table. Yet, there were whispers and warnings. Certain physicians wrote about the dangers of these fads, but their voices were largely drowned out by the powerful currents of fashion. To be beautiful was a woman's duty, to be fashionable was her armor. The long-term risks were a distant, abstract threat compared to the immediate, tangible reward of being admired at court tonight. You look at your reflection. The white foundation, the red cheeks, it's a complete transformation. You are now wearing the face of Versailles. It is a mask of conformity, a declaration that you belong, that you understand the rules of the game. It is also a declaration of your willingness to suffer for that belonging. The headache that started earlier is now a dull, persistent drawl. Your skin itches under the layers of paint, but you ignore it. This is the price of admission. You are no longer the girl from the provinces. You are a courtier, painted and polished, ready to face the day. You are beautiful, and you are being poisoned. At Versailles, the two are one and the same. With your face now a perfect, toxic mess, there is one final touch needed to complete the canvas. Your skin may be flawless under its layer of lead, but what about the occasional pimple that dares to erupt, or a scar from a childhood illness, or even the pitting left by a mild case of smallpox? A common affliction for these imperfections. The court had a solution that was both practical and flirtatious: the moche, or beauty patch. Cecile opens a small, flat, beautifully decorated box. Inside, nestled on a velvet lining, are tiny black shapes cut from silk, taffeta, or velvet. They come in all forms: simple circles, stars, hearts, crescent moons, even tiny carriages or ships for the truly ostentatious. This is your moche collection. The name moche literally means fly, a nod to the appearance of a small black dot on the pale skin. You have a small blemish near your lip that the white lead couldn't quite conceal. Cecile carefully selects a tiny, heart-shaped pet, using a bit of gum arabic or mastic as an adhesive. She delicately presses it onto your skin, covering the imperfection completely. The effect is transformative. What was once a flaw is now a deliberate beauty mark, a point of interest on the vast white landscape of your face. It draws the eye and adds a touch of playful charm to your otherwise rigid, doll-like appearance. But the moche was far more than a simple concealer. It was a complex, coded language, a secret way of sending messages in a society where open flirtation was frowned upon. The placement of a single black patch could signal your mood, your marital status, or your romantic availability. It was a form of silent communication, understood by every savvy courtier. You are, in essence, learning a new vocabulary. Your guide in these treacherous social waters explains the basics. A patch placed near the eye, called la passion, the passionate, signaled a fiery, dramatic temperament. One at the corner of the mouth, la base used the kisser, was an open invitation for a kiss. A patch on the cheek, la galante, the gallant, meant you were in a flirty mood. A heart-shaped one on the left cheek meant you were engaged or married, while on the right, it meant you were available. A moche placed delicately on the nose, Aliaf fronti, the cheeky one, was considered saucy and a bit impudent. This language of the patches is one of those historical details that feels almost too whimsical to be true. But it's well documented in the art and literature of the period. However, the exact grammar of this language is a subject of some historical debate. Did a star on the forehead mean the same thing in Paris as it did in London? Was the system universally understood? Or were there regional dialects and personal interpretations? Some historians argue it was a highly codified and universally recognized system, a vital tool for courtly intrigue. Others suggest it was more of a general trend, with the specific meanings being more fluid and exaggerated by satirical writers of the time. For you, the newcomer, it's best to stick to the most common interpretations to avoid sending a message you don't intend. You decide on a simple, small circle placed high on your cheekbone logolante. It's a safe choice, confident, a little playful, but not overly provocative. It says, "I am here, I am part of the game," without making any reckless promises. This practice reveals so much about the psychology of the court. It was a world of surfaces, where even a tiny flaw had to be hidden or, even better, turned into a decorative feature. It speaks to a society obsessed with artifice and control, where nothing, not even a pimple, could be left to nature. It also highlights the intense pressure on women to be constantly alluring and available, to communicate their romantic status as a matter of public information. One of the more peculiar and less discussed aspects of the mouche was its use by men. While predominantly a female fashion, it was not uncommon for aristocratic men, particularly the more flamboyant dandies, to sport a beauty patch or two. It was a sign of being fashionable and au current with the latest trends, blurring the lines of gender presentation in a way that can seem surprisingly modern. A man with a well-placed mouche was declaring himself a sophisticated player in the games of courtly love. You study your reflection one last time. The white face, the red cheeks, and now, the single, stark black dot of the mouche. The transformation is complete. You are no longer yourself. You are a carefully constructed image, a walking piece of art designed to be read and interpreted by those around you. The mouche is the final punctuation mark in the sentence you are trying to write with your appearance. It's a tiny detail, but in the world of Versailles, where a single glance can make or break a career, there are no tiny details. Every element matters. You touch the little silk heart on your cheek, a small anchor of artifice in a sea of unspoken rules, and prepare to face the world outside your door. Your face is a masterpiece of toxic artifice. But the construction of a courtly lady is far from over. The next stage involves your head, and is arguably the most dramatic and uncomfortable part of the entire process. It's time for the hair, or more accurately, the wig. Natural hair was simply not enough. It was too plain, too flat, and too difficult to style into the towering, elaborate creations demanded by fashion. So, like everything else, it was concealed and replaced with something far grander and more artificial. Cecile begins by pulling your own hair back tightly, pinning it flat against your scalp. If you were unlucky enough to have a lot of hair, it might be cropped short to fit more easily under the wig. Then comes the foundational linen or silk cap, fitted snugly over your head. And then, she brings out the wig. It's not just a wig, it's a sculpture. It's a towering structure of curled and powdered hair, built upon a wire or wicker frame. This particular style, known as a fontaine in its earlier telephone, has evolved into a wide, complex arrangement of curls, braids, and decorations. The hair itself could be human hair, often bought from poor women, or, more commonly, horse hair or goat hair, which held a curl better. Lifting the wig is a surprise. It's heavier than you expect. A significant weight that will sit on your head for the entire day. Cecile carefully positions it, securing it with a series of formidable-looking pins that feel like they're being driven directly into your scalp. The fit is tight and unforgiving. You feel an immediate sense of pressure, a dull ache that promises to blossom into a full-blown headache as the hours wear on. Once the wig is in place, the real artistry begins. It's not enough for it to be tall, it must be powdered. Cecile produces a large bellows filled with a fine, Scented powder, usually a cheap starch or flour, sometimes mixed with plaster dust for whiteness. She directs you to hold a cone-shaped mask over your face to protect your makeup and avoid inhaling the worst of the cloud. Then, she pumps the bellows, and you are engulfed in a white fog. The powder settles over the wig, turning it a uniform, fashionable grayish-white and filling the air with a starchy, perfume dust that makes you want to sneeze. This powdering process was messy and time-consuming. Wealthy women often had a dedicated powdering closet, a small room where they could be blasted with powder without ruining the furniture. The result was the iconic powdered look we see in portraits. But the reality was a constant dusting of white powder on the shoulders of dark clothing. But the discomfort and the mess were not the worst part. The true horror of these magnificent wigs was what lived inside them. These wigs were expensive and difficult to style, so they were not cleaned often, maybe once every few weeks, or even less frequently. The combination of horsehair, human hair, pomade made from animal fat, and starch powder created a warm, sheltered, and delicious environment for a thriving ecosystem of vermin. We're talking about lice, and not just lice, but sometimes they're predators. Like mites and even the occasional small mouse who might find the intricate framework a cozy place to build a nest. It's a horrifying thought, but it was a well-known reality of the time. To combat this, ladies used a grandeur, or a head scratcher. This was a long, elegant stick, often made of ivory or silver, with a tiny, claw-like hand on the end. It was designed to be slid up under the wig to relieve the incessant itching caused by the lice, without disturbing the elaborate hairstyle. The sight of a beautifully dressed duchess delicately scratching the inside of her wig with a silver claw was a common and completely unremarkable sight at court. Historians debate the level of awareness these women had about their head fauna. Were they in a state of constant, itchy denial, or was it just an accepted, unpleasant part of life? Like bad weather, the evidence, like the existence of the grandeur, suggests they were very much aware of the problem. It was just another misery to be endured for the sake of fashion. This raises a fascinating question in a society so obsessed with outward perfection. How did they reconcile the image of the pristine, doll-like lady with the knowledge that her head was likely teeming with parasites? It seems they simply chose to ignore the contradiction, focusing on the beautiful illusion rather than the crawling reality. Your wig is now powdered and pinned. Cecile adds the finishing touches: silk ribbons, pearls, and a few artificial flowers are woven into the curls. You look in the mirror. The transformation is astounding. The towering wig adds at least a foot to your height. It frames your painted face, giving you an air of regal, untouchable elegance. It is undeniably beautiful, but it is also hot, heavy, and you can already feel the first faint tickle of an itch on your scalp. You try to ignore it. You are now a walking work of art. From your powdered head to your soon-to-be corseted toes, the itch is just a small price to pay for this glorious, artificial elevation. You are taller. You are grander. And you are ready for the next layer of your gilded prison. With your head now a towering, powdered, and potentially inhabited work of art, the focus moves downwards to your torso. The ideal female from at Versailles was not the one nature gave you. It was a highly stylized, artificial silhouette, and the primary tool for achieving this was the corset. Cecile retrieves the garment. It's a formidable piece of engineering. It's not the soft, flexible corset of later centuries. This is a rigid, unforgiving cage. It's constructed from stiff linen or coutole, heavily reinforced with channels of hollow bone. Despite the name, this wasn't actually from Wales. It was Boleyn. The flexible, keratin no US plates from the mouths of Boleyn Wales strong, yet pliable, making it the 17th century equivalent of high-tech plastic. You hold your arms up as Cecile wraps the corset around your torso. It extends from just below your bust down to your hips. The goal is not necessarily a tiny waist, as it would be in the 19th century. The 17th century ideal was a stiff, conical torso and a flattened chest, creating a smooth, inverted triangle shape that made the torso appear longer and more elegant. It was also designed to dramatically lift and display the bust, pushing it up and together to create a prominent cleavage that would be visible above the lone necklines of your gowns. You take a deep breath, and Cecile begins to pull the laces at the back. This is not a one-person job. The lacing is intricate and requires significant strength to tighten. Cecile plants a foot on the small of your back for leverage in pulls. The pressure is immediate and immense. You feel your ribs compressing, your organs shifting. You exhale sharply, and she pulls again, cinching the laces tighter and tighter until your body is forced into the desired shape. The feeling is one of intense restriction. You can no longer take a deep breath. Your breathing becomes shallow, confined to the very top of your lungs. Any thought of bending at the waist is a fantasy. Your posture is now rigidly, unnaturally upright. You are encased. It is, in the truest sense of the word, a straitjacket of fashion. The long-term health consequences of wearing such a restrictive garment daily were, unsurprisingly, severe. The compression of the ribs could lead to deformities in the rib cage over time. Internal organs were displaced, which could cause digestive problems, constipation, and issues with pregnancy and childbirth. The inability to breathe deeply could lead to fainting spells. The stereotypical swooning lady was often just a victim of oxygen deprivation. Her corset simply too tight. A fascinating and slightly horrifying medical tidbit from the era is the corset liver. Autopsies performed centuries later on the remains of women from this period have sometimes revealed livers with deep grooves or even lobes that were deformed by the constant pressure of the corset stays into stark anatomical reminder of how fashion literally reshaped the bodies of these women from the inside out. So why would anyone endure this? The pressure to conform was immense. An uncorseted body was seen as loose, both physically and morally. It suggested a lack of discipline, a peasant-like sloppiness. The corset was a sign of your status, a declaration that you did not need to perform manual labor. It forced you into a graceful, if stiff, posture. It was the literal backbone of aristocratic identity. The debate among historians on this topic often revolves around agency. Were women simply passive victims of a patriarchal fashion standard, forced into these painful contraptions, or did they embrace the corset as a tool of self-fashioning? A way to create a desirable and powerful silhouette that allowed them to compete in the court's high-stakes social arena. The truth, as is often the case, is likely somewhere in the middle. It was both an instrument of oppression and a tool of empowerment, depending on the context. For you, right now, it feels mostly like oppression. You stand there for a moment, getting used to the sensation of being squeezed in a vice. Cecile knots the laces securely. You try to take a breath and are met with the unyielding resistance of the baleen. You feel a strange sense of detachment from your own body. It no longer feels like your own. It is a frame, an armature, upon which the rest of the costume will be hung. The corset has flattened your stomach, lifted your bust, and locked your spine into a perfect, regal posture. It is painful, it is restrictive, and it is absolutely essential. You have now sculpted your body to fit the clothes. The next step is to pile on the layers of fabric that this newly shaped form is designed to support. You are another step closer to the finished product, another degree removed from the natural, breathing person you were just a short while ago. You are a living statue, and the pedestal is a cage of whole bone. Now that your torso is locked into its rigid, conical form, it's time to build the bottom half of the silhouette. The 17th century ideal was not a slim, flowing line, but one of dramatic, architectural width. Your corseted upper body must rise from a veritable mountain of fabric, and to achieve that, you need an understructure. Cecile brings out the next layer, the panniers. The word pannier comes from the French for wicker baskets, like the ones slung over the back of a donkey, which gives you a pretty good idea of the shape. These are not a full, bell-shaped hoop skirt like you might see in other eras. Instead, they are two separate, cage-like structures, often made of wicker, collarbone, or flexible steel hoops, designed to sit on your hips and extend dramatically outwards. You step into them, and Cecile ties them securely around your waist. Suddenly, you are 3 times as wide as you were a moment ago. You feel absurd. Walking requires a new technique. You can't simply move forward. You must learn to navigate doorways sideways, like a crab. Sitting down will become a complex logistical operation, requiring a wide chair and a careful, sideways sinking motion. The sheer width is a statement. It takes up space. A woman in full court dress is not someone who can be easily overlooked or pushed aside. Her dress is a physical assertion of her presence. Over the panniers go several petticoats. One is simple, sturdy linen to protect the outer layers from the cage, and then 1 or 2 more of finer material, perhaps silk or decorated brocade. As these might be glimpsed when you walk, each layer adds weight and volume. You are already starting to feel the strain on your back and hips from the combined weight of the understructures. Finally, it's time for the gown itself. The robe à la Française. It is a masterpiece of textile art. The fabric is a heavy silk brocade, woven with intricate floral patterns in silver and gold thread. It shimmers and catches the light with every movement. The gown is actually into main parts. First, the overskirt, which is open at the front to reveal a decorative forepart. A panel of exquisitely embroidered fabric that covers the front of the petticoats. Then, the bodice and the overdress, which is fitted to your corsted torso and flows down over the panniers at the back into elegant watteau pleats from shoulder to floor. Getting into it is, once again, a team effort. Cecile holds the heavy garment open as you carefully maneuver yourself into it. She does up a series of hooks and eyes at the front, pulling the fabric taut against your corset. The sleeves are elbow length, ending in a cascade of delicate lace ruffles called engageantes. You are now fully dressed. You take a tentative step. The sheer weight of the outfit is staggering. Historians estimate that a full court dress, with all its understructures and layers, could weigh anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds, or about 4.5 to 13.5 kilograms. You are essentially wearing a small child's worth of clothing. This weight, combined with the restrictive corset and the heavy weight, makes every movement a conscious effort. It is a workout just to stand and walk. A little known but important detail of these gowns was the pocket. Where did you keep your fan, your snuff box? Or in most cases the pockets were not sewn into the dress itself. They were separate pouches, tied on a string around your waist, worn under the main gown. To access your pocket, you had to navigate a slit, left in the side seam of the overskirt. It was a slightly awkward but necessary solution, a hidden, practical element in an otherwise impractical costume. The ongoing historical debate here often touches on the idea of impracticality. Were these clothes really as crippling as they seem to our modern, comfort-focused sensibilities? Some scholars argue that women of the era were simply used to it. They grew up wearing restrictive clothing, unlearned from a young age how to move, breathe, and exist within these structures. It was their normal. Others contend that the physical toll was real and acknowledged, but was considered a worthy sacrifice for the social benefits the clothing provided. The ability to wear such an extravagant, cumbersome, and expensive outfit was the ultimate proof that you were a lady of leisure. Your dress screamed, "I do not wear it. I do not even move quickly. I am purely decorative." You look in the mirror. Rather, you attempt to get close enough to the small mirror to see yourself. You have to turn sideways to see the full effect. The silhouette is breathtaking. You are a walking sculpture. The wide hips, the narrow torso, the towering head. You are the very picture of aristocratic fashion. The heavy, luxurious fabric rustles and gleams. The lace at your elbows is a delicate foam, and the whole effect is one of undeniable, imposing grandeur. But you feel the weight in every muscle. You are acutely aware of the corset biting into your ribs. Your breathing is shallow. Your head aches from the wig. You are a prisoner in a beautiful, glittering jail of silk and hollowbone. This is the uniform of the court. and wearing it is both a privilege and a punishment. It is the price of beauty, the price of status, the price of being here, in the golden heart of Versailles. And now, there is only one final touch required to complete the transformation from a human being into a courtly vision. You are now a complete work of art, painted, powdered, costed, and costumed sculpture. But there is one final, invisible layer to apply. It is your ultimate defense, your most powerful to love deception, and your most potent weapon in the constant sensory war of Versailles. It is your perfume. In a palace where the stench of stale urine, unwashed bodies, and kitchen refuse is a constant, perfume is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is an olfactory shield, an aromatic armor you wear to protect yourself from the smells of the world and to project an aura of wealth and refinement. Cécile brings out a small, crystal flagon with a delicate stopper. The liquid inside glows like amber. This is not a light, Chateau Flora water. 17th century perfumes were heavy, aerosol, and animal RC. They were built on strong base notes designed to last for hours, even days, and to overpower any competing odors. The most prized and expensive ingredients were animal-derived musk from the glands of the musterians, civet from the civet cat, and ambergris, a waxy substance from the digestive system of sperm whales. These scents are earthy, pungent, and intensely musky, a far cry from the fresh, clean scents popular today. These animal icy notes were blended with rich florals like jasmine, tuberose, and rose, and dark, resinous scents like frankincense and myrrh. The resulting concoction is a complex, heady, and almost overwhelming aroma. It's the scent of power, of luxury, of unapologetic presence. You don't dab this perfume discreetly behind your ears. You douse yourself in it. Cécile applies it liberally to your wrists, your neck, and even directly onto your wig and your gown. The scent immediately envelops you in a thick, fragrant cloud. It's so strong it almost makes your eyes water, but it successfully masks the scent of the starch powder in your wig, the slight mustiness of the heavy fabrics, and, most importantly, any hint of your own human scent. Everything was perfumed. Gloves were soaked in fragrant oils, fans were scented to release a pleasant aroma when fluttered, and even the primadesses used to style wigs were heavily perfumed with animal fats and floral essences. A lady of the court was a walking cloud of fragrance, her approach announced by her scent long before she was seen. A curious and perhaps disgusting detail for modern sensibilities is the connection between hygiene or the lack thereof and these heavy perfumes. Because people bathed so infrequently, the perfume wasn't applied to a clean canvas. It mingled with the natural oils and scents of the body, creating a unique, personalized aroma for each wearer. A woman's signature scent was a complex cocktail of expensive French perfume and her own unwashed skin. It's a concept that is deeply alien to our modern obsession with soapy cleanliness. The historical debate around this is nuanced. Did they use things heavy, animal icy scents because they genuinely enjoyed them, or simply because they were the only thing strong enough to be effective? The prevailing theory is a bit of both. The musky, animal-like notes were considered sophisticated and even alluring, tapping into a more primal sense of smell. At the same time, their sheer power was a practical necessity. Daylight, fresh citrus scent would have been utterly defeated by the olfactory chaos of a crowded ballroom at Versailles. You had to fight fire with fire, or in this case, fight stench with a veritable wall of perfume. King Louis XIV himself was a great lover of fragrance, so much so that he was known as the sweetest-smelling king of all. In his youth, he favored the heavy musk and civet scents popular at the time. His royal perfumer had the monumental task of creating a new scent for him every single day. However, later in life, he developed severe allergies and headaches, likely from a lifetime of olfactory overstimulation. He could no longer tolerate the heavy perfumes he once loved and came to favor the lighter, singular scent of orange blossom. He had it planted all around the grounds of Versailles, and his rooms were constantly washed with water scented with it. His personal preference helped shift the court's fashion towards slightly lighter, more floral fragrances. But the culture of heavy perfume use remained deeply ingrained. You take a final sniff of the air around you. Your personal space is now a bubble of pure, overwhelming fragrance. It is your final layer of artifice, a fragrant declaration of your status. It separates you from the unperfumed masses and insulates you from the grim realities of the palace's sanitation. It is your armor, your calling card, and your disguise. You are now ready. The transformation is complete. You are no longer a person, but an idea, the idea of a perfect, beautiful, and impossibly fragrant courtly lady. The transformation is absolute. You turn, carefully, to face the small, polished metal mirror on your washed sand. The person looking back at you is a stranger. She is magnificent, terrifying, and utterly artificial. This is the moment where all the individual elements, the toxic paint, the towering wig, the suffocating corset, the mountain of silk, the cloud of perfume coalesce into a single, cohesive image. You see a face that is not your own. It is a perfect, white oval, interrupted only by two stark circles of red and a single, coquettish black patch. The eyes, your eyes, look out from this mask, but they seem distant, transformed by the sheer artifice surrounding them. Above this face rises a mountain of powdered hair, a structure so grand it seems to have its own gravitational pull, making your neck ache in anticipation. Your body has vanished, replaced by a new geometry. Your torso is a stiff, inverted cone, your bust pushed high. From this narrow point, your hips flare out in an impossible, architectural sweep, the heavy brocade falling in gleaming folds to the floor. You are wider than a doorway, taller than you have ever been. Your own shape, the familiar lines and curves of your body, is completely gone, buried under layers of hollow bone, wicker, and silk. You lift a hand to touch your face, but stop short. The lace and gauge antes at your elbow cascade forward, a delicate foam of white. Your hand, with its pale skin and carefully manicured nails, looks like a prop, an accessory to the larger costume. You feel a profound sense of disembodiment, as if your consciousness is a small, frightened pilot operating a large, cumbersome, and incredibly ornate machine. This feeling of being a perfect stranger to oneself was likely a common psychological experience for the women of the court. The daily ritual of the Tawilte was a process of erasure. It erased your natural face, your natural body shape, your natural scent, and replaced it with a uniform, fashionable ideal. You were not presenting yourself to the world, you were presenting a carefully constructed representative of yourself, an ambassador of your family's ambition and status. A curious, and rather poignant, detail of this transformation is what it did to human connection. When everyone is wearing a mask, both literally, with makeup, and figuratively, with etiquette, how do you form a genuine bond when you cannot laugh freely for fear of cracking your foundation, or embrace someone for fear of crushing your gown or dislodging your wig? Interactions become stiff, distant, and performative. The costume creates a physical barrier that mirrors the emotional barriers required to survive the court's intrigues. Historians often debate the psychological impact of this level of artifice. Did these women suffer from a loss of identity, a sense of alienation from their own bodies and selves, or did they see this construction as a form of power, a way to become larger-than-life figures? Invulnerable and magnificent, perhaps the truth is that it was both. On a good day, when your gown rustled just so and your beauty earned an admiring glance from a high-ranking duke, it felt like power. You were a goddess, a work of art. On a bad day, when your head throbbed, your corset bit into your flesh, and the stench of the hallway seemed to pierce your cloud of perfume, it felt like a prison. You were a decorated slave to fashion. You are, in essence, a living doll, and like a doll, you are both beautiful and inanimate. You are designed to be looked at, to be admired, to be positioned just so in the grand diorama of the court. Your purpose is to be beautiful, to be silent unless spoken to, and to gracefully occupy the space you have been assigned. This is the paradox of your existence at Versailles. You have been brought to the center of power, but you have been rendered powerless in a new way. You have been stripped of your natural self and rebuilt as a perfect object. Your value is measured in the whiteness of your skin, the height of your wig, the richness of your dress, your wit, your intelligence, your kindness. These are secondary currencies, only valuable if the exterior is flawless. You take one last look at the magnificent stranger in the mirror. She is ruddy. She is armed with perfume, armored in silk, and her faces are perfect, pleasant, poisonous lie. She is everything she needs to be to survive a day at the court of the Sun King. You take a shallow breath, the corset making its presence known, and you turn away from the mirror. It's time to present this creation to the world. It's time to go and be seen. The performance is about to begin, and you are the star, whether you like it or not. You are now a finished product, a masterpiece of artifice ready for display. With Cecilia's help, you maneuver your tremendous wit out of your small room and back into the grand corridors of the palace. Your destination is the Hall of Mirrors, the glittering heart of Versailles, where the court gathers to see and be seen before the king's public dinner. Walking is a slow, deliberate process. You glide more than you step, your feet hidden beneath the vast expanse of your skirt. The sheer weight of your gown makes you move with a stately, almost funereal pace. You hold your head high, balancing the towering wig, your neck muscles already protesting. With every step, the heavy silk brocade of your dress makes a satisfying, expensive swish sound on the marble floors. It's the sound of wealth, the sound of leisure. The corridors are even more crowded than yesterday, a slow-moving river of jewels, silk, and powdered hair. You are now one of them, a fellow vessel in this perfumed fleet. You pass by others, your wide panniers forcing a respectful distance. You exchange small, tight-lipped smiles and barely perceptible nods with the women you pass. It's a silent acknowledgement. I see the effort you've made. You see the effort I've made. We are both participants in this grand, absurd charade. As you get closer to the state apartments, the architecture becomes more and more opulent. The ceilings are a dizzying riot of painted gods and goddesses. The walls are heavy with gilded carvings and priceless tapestries. But then, you step into it. The gallery desk glaces, the Hall of Mirrors. The effect is dazzling, overwhelming. On one side, a series of 17 massive arched windows look out over the formal gardens, flooding the space with light. On the other side, 17 identical arches are filled with 357 individual mirrors. The light from the windows bounces off the mirrors, creating an explosion of brightness and reflection. The ceiling is a masterpiece of painted propaganda, celebrating the military and political victories of Louis XVI. The entire room is a symphony of gold, glass, and light, designed to intimidate. And it works. You pause for a moment, letting your eyes adjust. The hall is filled with courtiers, strolling in small groups. Their conversations are low, conspiratorial hum. Their glittering clothes and jewels are reflected 1,000 times in the mirrors, creating a dizzying, kaleidoscopic effect. It feels like you've stepped into a diamond. But as your eyes adapt, you start to notice the details that don't appear in the official portraits. The magnificent marble floor is not pristine. You must watch your step carefully. Tucked into the gilded corners, you spot little piles of debris. You see a fruit peel someone has discarded near the base of a silver candelabra. And you smell it again. That faint but unmistakable whiff of urine. A ghost of this golden feast. This is the great paradox of the Hall of Mirrors. It was the pinnacle of French artistry and wealth, but it was also a high-traffic public thoroughfare. It had to be constantly cleaned. But it was an impossible task. A little-known fact is that during large celebrations or balls, the press of people was so great, and the facilities so lacking, that courtiers would often relieve themselves in the grand fireplaces or behind the heavy curtains, Servants with buckets and mops were a constant, discreet presence, but they were fighting a never-ending battle against basic human biology. The most beautiful room in Europe often read. You lift your silken skirt slightly, a gesture that is both elegant and practical, to avoid dragging the expensive fabric through any unseen filth. You watch a duchess's small, fluffy dog yap at the heels of a baron, who pretends not to notice. Pets were allowed almost everywhere in the palace, and they were not house-trained. Their messes were just another ingredient in the rich tapestry of grime that underlay the glittering surface. The debate among historians here is about the lived experience versus the idealized image. We see paintings of the Hall of Mirrors as a pristine, divine space, but the letters and diaries of the people who were actually there tell a different story. They speak of the crowds, the noise, the smells, the constant jostling for position. Was it a beautiful dream or a beautiful, dirty, crowded nightmare? The answer is probably both. At the same time, it was a space of incredible beauty that you had to learn to navigate with a certain amount of willful blindness and a good pair of shoes. You begin your slow promenade down the length of the hall. This is the main event. You walk from one end to the other, then turn and walk back. The purpose is to be seen by everyone, to have your gown, your wig, and your jewels assessed and catalogued by hundreds of critical eyes. You keep a serene, pleasant expression on your painted face, even as your feet begin to ache and the weight of your wig sends a sharp pain down your neck. You are a moving part of the decoration, an object of beauty contributing to the overall spectacle. But you are also navigating a minefield. You must be careful not to step on anyone's train, to avoid being jostled by a clumsy courtier, and to keep your hem from sweeping through something unpleasant. It is a walk of performative grace and hidden anxieties, the perfect metaphor for life at Versailles. You are gliding through a dream, trying very hard to ignore the dirt in the corners. As you continue your slow, calculated promenade down the Hall of Mirrors, a sudden change in the atmosphere makes you catch your shallow, coursed breath. The low hum of conversation dips. The rustling of silk seems to quiet, and the collective, subtle shift in posture ripples through the crowd. It's as if a magnetic force has entered the room, and all the iron filings are slowly turning to face it. The king has arrived. You see him at the far end of the gallery, emerging from his private apartments. Louis XIV is not just a man, he is an event. He is surrounded by a small, privileged coterie of his highest-ranking ministers and family members. But he is the undisputed center of gravity. Everything and everyone orbits around him. He is, as always, impeccably dressed. Today he wears a coat of deep crimson velvet, so richly embroidered with gold thread that it seems to shimmer with its own light. The famous red-heeled shoes add to his height, and the large, perfectly powdered wig frames a face that is accustomed to absolute authority. He carries himself with a unique blend of regal formality and practiced ease. He is the sun, and this is his court, and his light is what gives life to everything here. This is the moment that defines every single day at Versailles. The entire purpose of this gathering, of your costume, of your very presence here, is the chance to be seen by him. A flicker of recognition, a brief nod, a single word from the king could elevate your family's status for a generation. Conversely, a look of royal displeasure could ruin you instantly. Your future, and the future of your family, can be decided in the time it takes for his gaze to sweep across the room. You instinctively find a place to stand, pressing back slightly against the wall of mirrors. You perform a low, slow reverence, sinking into your voluminous skirts as he draws nearer. You keep your eyes demurely lowered, as it is considered improper to stare directly at the monarch unless he addresses you first. You can see his diamond-buckled shoes on the marble floor as he passes. You hold your breath. He stops. He is speaking to a portly duke just a few feet away from you. The duke, who moments before was loud and boisterous, is now bowing so low he looks like a folded napkin. The king's voice is not loud, but it carries with an easy authority. You can't make out the words, only the low, melodic timbre. The entire hall is pretending not to listen, but every ear is strained in his direction. This is the core of Louis XIV's political genius, which historians continue to analyze. By turning daily life into a public performance, he transformed the mundane into the political. Deliver his public waking, his meals, his walk to chapel, they were all ritualized ceremonies where he could distribute that most precious of commodities, his attention. Handing a nobleman a candlestick during the Calcutta, his public bedtime ceremony, was a greater honor than granting him a vast estate. He had created a system where prestige was more valuable than land, and he was the sole dispenser of that prestige. He had trapped the nobility in a cage of etiquette, and he held the only key. A fashionably specific example of this was the just ochre brevet. This was a special blue coat, embroidered with silver and gold, that the king personally awarded to a select few noblemen. The only privilege it conferred was the right to accompany the king on his hunts at Marly or Fontainebleau. It was just a coat, but to be granted one was a sign of ultimate royal favor, and it was coveted with a passion that is hard for us to understand. Men would scheme and bankrupt themselves for the chance to wear that specific blue jacket. The king finishes his conversation with the duke and moves on. His gaze sweeps across your section of the room. It's a brief, almost cursory glance, the look of a man surveying his own property. For a single, heart-stopping second, his eyes seem to meet yours. You see a flicker of something. Is it appraisal annoyance, or is it just the blank look of a monarch seeing one more unfamiliar face in a sea of petitioners you will never know? The moment passes. He looks away and continues his slow progress down the hall. You rise from your curtsy, your knees trembling slightly. You feel a strange mix of disappointment and profound relief. He didn't speak to you, which is a failure. But he also didn't frown at you, which is a victory. You have survived another pass of the sun's burning light. You have remained in orbit, neither crashing into the star nor being flung out into the cold darkness. The debate over Louis XIV's character was here brilliant. Visionary political strategist or an narcissistic megalomaniac obsessed with his own glory will likely never be resolved. Standing here, in this hall he built for his own reflection. You suspect he was both. He was a man who understood power on a profound, instinctual level and built a system to magnify it, using architecture, art, and etiquette as his tools. The energy in the hall slowly returns to its previous level, but the charge of the king's presence lingers. You have had your moment, or your non-moment. You have been weighed, measured, and found present. For now, in the complex, brutal arithmetic of Versailles, that is enough. You smooth down your skirts and prepare to continue your promenade, your mind replaying that one fleeting second of eye contact over and over, trying to decipher a meaning that was probably never there. With the tension of the king's passage beginning to fade, the social games of the court resume, but with a renewed intensity. Now that the monarch has made his appearance, the real business of jockeying for position and exchanging information can begin in earnest, and in this silent, subtle warfare. One of your most important weapons is the object you now hold in your hand, your fan. A fan is not just a tool for creating a breeze, which, in these crowded, stuffy rooms, is certainly a welcome function. It is a vital accessory, an extension of your body language, and a device for both concealment and communication. Cecile helped you choose one this morning. It's a beautiful object. The stick's made of carved ivory and the leaf made of painted silk, depicting a romantic pastoral scene. Holding it feels both elegant and empowering. You watch the more experienced ladies around you and quickly learn that the fan has a complex vocabulary of its own. It's a school of gesture that you must master. A fan snap's sharp click can signal irritation or a definitive end to a conversation. Fluttering it quickly while meeting someone's gaze is a sign of interest. Holding it to your lips is a command for silence or a signal that you are about to share a secret. This language of the fan, much like the language of the beauty patch, was a well understood, informal system of communication. It allowed women to express a range of emotions and intentions that decorum forbade them from speaking aloud. In a world where you are constantly observed, the fan creates a small, mobile screen, a private space in a public world. You can hide a smirk, a yawn, or an unflattering expression behind its painted leaves. You can stage a whisper to a friend, your mouth shielded from the prying eyes of your rivals. You decide to practice. A young, foppishly dressed courtier catches your eye from across the hall and gives you a ridiculously exaggerated bow. You want to laugh, but that would be unladylike. Instead, you raise your fan slowly, covering the lower half of your face, your eyes peering over the top with what you hope is an expression of cool, mysterious amusement. He seems to take this as encouragement and starts to preen. You've made your first move in the silent game. A little known and fascinating aspect of fan craft is the spy fan. Some novelty fans were designed with tiny, concealed mirrors or peepholes cleverly integrated into the sticks or the leaf. This would allow a lady to appear to be demurely fanning herself while actually observing what was happening behind her or to her side. It was the 17th century equivalent of a rear-view mirror, a perfect tool for espionage in the gossip-fueled environment of the court, whether these were common or just a rare. Gimmicky novelty is a point of historical discussion, but their very existence speaks volumes about the paranoid, watchful atmosphere of Versailles. You see two older duchesses standing near a window, their heads close together, their fans raised, shielding their conversation from the rest of the room. Their movements are minimal and precise, a slight flick of the wrist, a slow, deliberate fold. It's a masterclass in fan diplomacy. They are likely dissecting the king's mood, trading information about who is in favor and who is out, and planning their next strategic moves. The fan is their weapon of choice, silent and deadly. The debate among social historians often centers on how much power these tools actually gave women. Was the fan a genuine instrument of female agency, allowing them to carve out a space for communication and power in a patriarchal world, or was it merely a pretty toy? A safe and trivial outlet for female expression that ultimately reinforced their exclusion from the real, male-dominated spheres of politics and power? There's no easy answer. The fan was not going to get you a seat on the King's Council, but it could certainly help you navigate the treacherous social currents that determined your quality of life, your marriage prospects, and your family's standing at court. It was a tool for managing the power you did have access to. You feel a presence at your elbow. It's another young woman, recently arrived like you, her face a mixture of awe and terror. Your gown is beautiful, she whispers, her own fan fluttering nervously like a trapped bird. From lion. Yes, you reply, your voice a little shaky. You use your fan to gesture towards her own dress, as is yours. The lace is exquisite. It's a small, simple exchange, but it's a start. You have used the universal language of fashion to make a potential ally. You spend the next few minutes in a quiet, fan-shielded conversation, trading pleasantries and discovering you are both lodging in the same freezing, remote wing of the palace. You found a fellow soldier in the trenches. The fan in your hand no longer feels like a mere accessory. It feels like a shield and a key. It can conceal your anxieties, project a confidence you don't feel, and initiate the conversations that are the lifeblood of this place. As you stand there, fanning yourself with a slow, rhythmic motion, you feel a tiny bit more in control. You are learning the language, one silent, graceful gesture at a time. The slow, stately promenade in the Hall of Mirrors eventually gives way to the next ritual on the royal schedule, la grande couverte, the king's public dinner. This is not a meal in the way you understand it. It is a theatrical performance, a sacred ceremony where the king and select members of the royal family eat on a raised platform, under the watchful gaze of the entire court. You and your new acquaintance follow the perfumed herd into the antechamber designated for the event. The room is already packed. A golden balustrade separates the public viewing area from the royal dining table. There are no chairs for the spectators. You will be standing for the entire duration, which could be well over an hour. You find a spot that gives you a reasonably clear view of the stage, wedging yourself between a stern-looking baron and a woman whose wig is so wide it keeps brushing against your shoulder. The table is set with breathtaking opulence, a damask tablecloth so white it hurts the eyes, a forest of gold and silver cutlery, an elaborate, sculptural centerpiece, the king's personal immersive, a magnificent, ship-shaped container made of solid gold, sits near his plate. Originally used to hold spices and to test for poison, it is now a pure symbol of his power and wealth. A procession of servants enters, moving with the precision of soldiers on parade. The dishes are brought in under silver domes, not just to keep them warm, but to add a sense of drama and ceremony to the unveiling of each course. The king is served by the highest-ranking nobles in the room. Their roles in this performance are highly coveted honor. One might present his glass, another his napkin. To be the one chosen to hand the king his fork is to be bathed in reflected glory. The meal itself is a marathon. The French style of service à la Française, means that all the dishes for a particular course, sometimes dozens of them, are placed on the table at once. It's a stunning visual feast. A landscape of roasted birds, glistening jellies, and towering constructions of pastry. The king surveys the options, indicates what he would like, and a tiny portion is served to him. Here's a fascinating tidbit about royal dining. Despite the incredible variety on display, the king likely ate very little of it. By the time the food had made the long journey from the distant kitchens to the dining chamber, passing through a chain of command and ceremonial procedure, it was often lukewarm at best. Furthermore, for security reasons, he would only eat a small amount of any one dish. The grand covet was less about satisfying hunger and more about demonstrating the astonishing productivity and wealth of his kingdom. For you, standing in the crowd, the experience is a strange form of torture. The smells wafting from the table are incredible: roast pheasant, truffle sausage, warm bread in your own stomach, long empty, rumbles in protest. But you can't eat. You can only watch. And all the while, your corset is digging a little deeper into your ribs. The act of standing, combined with the compression of your torso, makes you feel lightheaded. You shift your weight from one aching foot to the other, trying to breathe as deeply as the hollow bone cage will allow. You see a young woman near the front of the crowd sway on her feet, her face pale. Her companion quickly grabs her arm, fanning her vigorously before she faints completely. It's a common occurrence. The heat from the candles and the press of bodies, combined with the causerie and the sheer exhaustion of the courtly routine, was a recipe for swooning. The historical debate here often revolves around the purpose of this bizarre ritual. Was it purely an act of royal hegemonia, forcing his subjects to watch him eat as a demonstration of his godlike status, or was it a canny political tool, a continuation of the medieval tradition that a king's life should be public, demonstrating his health and vigor to his people and assuring them that the realm was stable? Like most things with Louis XVI, it was probably a masterful blend of both. It reinforced his majesty while providing a stage for the daily drama of courtly favor. You are witnessing a performance of appetite, not the satisfaction of it. And it's a very messy performance. Table manners of the era were not what we'd consider refined. People ate with their fingers a great deal, and the three-pronged fork was still a relatively new and slightly clumsy invention. The king himself was known for his prodigious appetite and his ability to pop an entire boiled egg into his mouth in one go. There was a certain earthy robustness to it all that clashes with the gilded formality of the setting. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the king pushes his chair back slightly and wipes his mouth with a napkin. It is the signal. The performance is over. The crowd begins to disperse. A collective sigh of relief rippling through the room as hundreds of aching feet and compressed budgets are finally allowed to move. You have survived another of Versailles' bizarre rituals. You are hungry, you are exhausted, and your head is pounding, but you have successfully performed your role as a silent, admiring spectator. Now, you can only hope to find a meaty meal of your own, somewhere in the less glamorous corners of this golden palace. The grand performance of the king's dinner is over. But for you and the thousands of other courtiers, a more private and far more pressing biological reality looms. You've been standing for hours. You've consumed liquids earlier in the day. And now you are faced with the single most awkward and poorly addressed problem at Versailles. Where do you go to the bathroom? You excuse yourself from your new acquaintance. A shared look of desperate understanding passing between you. Now begins a frantic, yet discreet, search. As you know from your first day, there are no public restrooms. The magnificent, glittering state apartments are completely devoid of anything resembling a toilet. This was not an oversight, it was a feature of the design. Bodily functions were considered a private, domestic matter, unfit for the grand public spaces dedicated to the glory of the king. So what are your options? They are all, to varying degrees, terrible. Option 1, the chaise passée. This is the most civilized solution, but it's a luxury. It's a beautifully crafted wooden chair, often upholstered in velvet, with a hole in the seat and a removable chamber pot, a pot de chambre concealed below. A high-ranking duchess might have one of these in a small, private garderobe or closet adjoining her apartment. For you, a newcomer in a tiny, fireplace-less room, this is an impossible dream. You don't have the space, and you certainly don't have the rank. Option 2, your personal pot de chambre. This is your only sanctioned piece of equipment. It's a simple porcelain bowl, perhaps with a lid, that Cecile keeps under your bed. To use it, you must make the long, arduous journey back to your room in the north wing. This involves navigating the crowded corridors, hoisting your massive skirts, and hoping you make it in time. Once the deed is done, it is Cecile's job to dispose of the contents. This involves another perilous journey, carrying the full pot down back staircases to the designated cesspit in the palace grounds, or, more commonly, simply dumping it out of a window into a courtyard, often preceded by a shout of "Gardez-le" from the French gardes low, will watch out for the water. Option 3, improvisation. This is the most common, and most disgusting, solution for the majority of courtiers caught in a moment of need far from their rooms. You must find a secluded spot, an unused fireplace, a dark corner of a little-used staircase, the dense shrubbery in the gardens, or the space behind a large tapestry becomes an impromptu toilet. It was a known and accepted, if unspoken, part of palace life. The grand and beautiful spaces of Versailles were, in reality, a minefield of human waste. This is the filthy secret at the heart of the Golden Palace. For all its outward beauty and obsession with etiquette, the day-to-day reality was incredibly unsanitary. The smell you first noticed upon your arrival now makes perfect, horrifying sense. It was the smell of thousands of people living in a magnificent building with no plumbing. A bizarre little-known job title at the court was the porte-chaise d'affaires, or the bearer of the business chair. This was a highly privileged position, held by 2 trusted valets, whose sole job was to attend the king during his most private moments on his personal commode. They were privy to the king's daily functions and were considered to be in his innermost circle. It's a strange testament to the court's priorities that the men who handled the king's chamber pot were held in higher esteem than many titled nobles. You decide you can't possibly make it all the way back to your room. You must resort to option 3. You begin a desperate search for a quiet corner. You glide down a less crowded corridor, your heart pounding. The rustle of your silk skirt seems deafeningly loud. You find a deep alcove, shrouded in shadow, where a large, dusty statue of a forgotten Roman god stands guard. This will have to do. You back into the space, your wide panniers making it a clumsy maneuver. You listen for footsteps. The coast is clear. You then face the logistical nightmare of your clothing. You must somehow lift the multiple layers of heavy petticoats and the vast silk overskirt, a feat of strength and balance, all while trying to remain upright and as dignified as possible. It is a moment of profound, comical, and utter humiliation. You are a walking work of art, a vision of aristocratic grace, and you are currently squatting behind a statue like a stray animal. The historical debate here isn't whether this happened, it's well documented, but how people emotionally and psychologically dealt with it. Did they become completely desensitized to the filth and lack of privacy, or was it a constant source of stress, anxiety, and disgust? A grim secret shared by everyone but never openly acknowledged. The sheer amount of perfume and the constant presence of cleaning servants suggest that they were not oblivious to the problem, but rather engaged in a perpetual, and ultimately failed, attempt to manage an unmanageable situation. You quickly rearrange your mountain of clothing, your cheeks burning with shame. You step out from behind the statue, smoothing your skirts and trying to project an air of serene composure, as if you were merely admiring the craftsmanship of the sculpture. You pray no one saw you. You pray you haven't soiled the hem of your expensive gown. This is the reality that lies beneath the polish of Versailles. It is a world of incredible beauty and profound squalor, where the most elegant people perform the most undignified acts in the shadows of golden hallways. It is a secret everyone knows and no one talks about. The great, unspoken truth of the golden cage. You make your way back to the main reception rooms, your face a mask of composure, but your mind replaying the humiliating episode behind the statue. A dull headache, which has been a constant companion since the application of your makeup this morning, is now intensifying into a persistent, throbbing pain behind your eyes. Your skin, particularly on your cheeks where the rouge was applied, feels itchy and inflamed. You dismiss it at first. It's the stress of the day, the weight of the wig, the stuff in tins of the rooms. But as the days turn into weeks, these small physical complaints begin to grow into a chorus of deeper maladies. This is the slow, insidious work of the poison you paint on your face every single day. The Venetian CERUS, the white lead foundation, is beginning its assault on your body. You notice your appetite is waning, and you often feel a low-grade, persistent nausea. You suffer from bouts of what the court physicians call colic sharp, cramping pains in your abdomen. You blame the rich, unfamiliar food, but it is the lead being absorbed through your skin and slowly poisoning your digestive system. Your skin, the very thing you are trying to perfect, begins to betray you. The skin on your face, constantly coated in a thick layer of lead paste, can no longer breathe. It becomes dry, grayish, and prone to eruptions and sores. This creates a vicious, tragic cycle. To hide the damage being caused by the makeup, you have to apply even more of it, a thicker layer of the very poison that is causing the problem. You are trapped. Your face a battleground between your natural skin and the toxic ideal of beauty. Then there is the mercury in your rouge. The initial burning sensation has given way to a more permanent irritation, but the real damage is happening inside. You find yourself becoming uncharacteristically irritable and prone to bouts of melancholy. Your hands, you notice one evening while holding your fan, have a slight, almost imperceptible tremor, and when you smile at your reflection, you see with horror that your gums seem to be receding, pulling away from your teeth and turning a dark, purplish color. This is classic mercury poisoning, a well-known affliction among mirror makers and hatters of the era, but one that the ladies of the court were inflicting upon themselves daily. A particularly grim and lesser-known consequence of these cosmetics was their effect on fertility and pregnancy. Lead and mercury are teratotin, meaning they can cause severe birth defects. Female courtiers who were heavily using these cosmetics suffered from higher rates of miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant mortality. They were sacrificing not only their own health but the health of the next generation for the sake of a fashionable complexion. You see the signs all around you. Now that you know what to look for, you see older duchesses with unwrinkled, smooth, white faces that, upon closer inspection, have a waxy, lifeless quality. You see them smile and reveal mouths full of blackened stumps or expensive, ill-fitting porcelain dentures. You hear them complain of the vapors or nervous afflictions, a catch-all term for the tremors, anxiety, and depression that were likely the neurological effects of heavy metal poisoning. The medical understanding of the time is the subject of ongoing historical debate. Were physicians completely in the dark? Or were they simply powerless against the tide of fashion? The truth is complex. Some medical texts of the period did warn against the use of certain cosmetic ingredients, linking them to palsies and decay. But the scientific method was in its infancy. It was difficult to draw a direct causal link between a lady's rouge and her rotting teeth when so many other factors, poor diet, rampant disease, lack of sanitation, could also be to blame. The diagnosis was more likely to be an imbalance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, then black bile, the prevailing medical theory of the day. You feel trapped. To stop using the makeup is unthinkable. To appear at court with a natural, blotchy, or sun-touched face would be social suicide. It would be a declaration that you are poor, provincial, or worse, that you simply don't care. You would become invisible, a ghost at the feast. So, every morning, despite the headaches, despite the itching skin and the trembling hands, you sit before your mirror. You watch as Cecile opens the small porcelain pots. You take a shallow, steadying breath, and you allow her to paint your face with the poisons that are slowly, inexorably consuming you from the inside out. The beautiful mask you wear is no longer just a disguise, it is your enemy. It is a slow, methodical assassin that you willingly invite into your home every day. You are engaged in a war of attrition with your own reflection, and it is a war you are destined to lose. The price of beauty at Versailles is not paid in gold or silver, but in flesh and blood, in nerve endings and bone marrow. One toxic, fashionable day at a time. One body. You wake up and the world is tilted. The headache is no longer a dull throb, it's a blinding, nauseating pain. A wave of dizziness washes over you as you try to sit up, and your stomach churns with the familiar lead-induced colic. You are, by the standards of the 17th century, officially ill. Her face edged with worry, insists on summoning a physician. The arrival of the doctor is an event in itself. He is an imposing figure in a dark coat and a serious, academic wig, carrying a leather bag that smells of bitter herbs and alcohol. He does not smile. Medicine in this area is a solemn, serious, and often terrifying business. He listens to your chest with an ear trumpet, peers into your eyes, and examines your tongue. He asks Cecile a series of questions about your diet, your sleep, and the regularity of your bowel movements, a topic of intense medical interest. He nods gravely, his expression offering no comfort. He does not, of course, ask about the thick layer of white paint on your face, which even now you have not removed. That is a matter of aesthetics, not medicine. After a period of thoughtful chin-stroking, he delivers his diagnosis. It is, as you expected, an imbalance of the humors. Specifically, he declares you have an excess of sanguine humor, too much blood, which is causing a heated distemper in your system. The prescription is immediate, traditional, and brutal. You must be bled. This is the cornerstone of 17th century medical practice. Phlebotomy, or bloodletting, was considered a panacea for almost every ailment, from fevers and headaches to melancholy and indigestion. The theory was that by removing the excess or corrupted blood, the body's humors could be brought back into balance, allowing it to heal itself. It was, of course, incredibly dangerous, often weakening an already sick patient and leading to infection or death. But it was the unquestioned standard of care. Cecile places a brass bowl on the bedside table. The physician rolls up your sleeve and produces a small, wicked-looking instrument called a lancet. With a swift, practiced movement, he makes a small incision in the crook of your elbow. The blood, dark and shockingly vivid, begins to well up and trickle into the bowl. You watch, horrified and fascinated, as your own life force is drained away. The physician watches the flow intently, as if reading a prophecy in the stream. He will remove a prescribed amount, perhaps a cup or two, enough to make you feel lightheaded and weak, which was considered a sign that the treatment was working. But the ordeal is not over. He also prescribes a purgative, a powerful laxative designed to violently cleanse your bowels of any lingering impurities. He mixes a foul-smelling concoction from his bag, likely containing ingredients like senna, rhubarb, or even more toxic substances like antimony, and instructs you to drink it. The taste is vile, and the effects, will be swift and unpleasant, leaving you exhausted and dehydrated. A lesser-known and truly bizarre element of the 17th century pharmacopoeia was the use of mummy powder. This was, literally, ground up ancient Egyptian mummies, which were imported to Europe and sold by apothecaries as a cure-all. It was believed to have powerful healing properties and was prescribed for everything from headaches to epilepsy. The idea of consuming a person, even 1,000s of years old, for medicinal purposes is horrifying to us, but it was a mainstream, if expensive, treatment at the time. The historical debate surrounding these medical practices is intense. Were these doctors charlatans and butchers, knowingly inflicting harm on their patients? The general consensus among medical historians is no. They were operating within the best scientific framework available to them. They genuinely believed that bleeding, purging, and prescribing powdered mummy were effective treatments. Their intentions were good, their methods, from our modern perspective, were horrifully misguided. They were trying to cure a patient suffering from heavy metal poisoning by bleeding her and giving her powerful laxatives, a cure that could easily be more dangerous than the disease. The physician packs his bag, gives Cecile a list of dietary restrictions: no wheat meat, no wine, collects his handsome fee, and departs, leaving you pale, weak, and feeling considerably worse than when he arrived. You are left alone in your cold room, the brass bowl of your own blood sitting on the table like a grim trophy. You have now experienced the care of the court, when your body finally rebels against the poisons of fashion. It is subjected to the poisons of medicine. It's a closed, terrifying loop. The beauty standards make you sick, and the cures make you sicker. As you lie in your bed, dizzy and weak, you have a terrifying realization there is no escape. The golden cage of Versailles has its own infirmary, and its treatments are just another form of torture. After a few days of enduring the physician's prescribed cures, you are left weak and fragile. But the immediate crisis has passed. The violent purging has ceased, and the dizziness has subsided into a persistent, weary fatigue. The court, with its relentless schedule, waits for no one. It's time to rejoin the performance. It is evening, and you are preparing for a soiree in one of the grand apartments. The ritual of the Tawilte begins all over again. Tonight, however, feels different. As Cecile rebuilds the beautiful, toxic mask on your face, you feel a profound sense of alienation. The ritual that once felt like an exciting transformation now feels like a grim necessity, a preparation for battle. The lead paste feels colder. The mercury rouge stings a little more sharply. Later that night, long after the last polite conversation has faded and the final card game has been played, you return to the freezing silence of your room. The journey back through the darkened, echoing corridors of the palace feels longer than ever. Your feet ache, your head throbs, and the heavy silence of the north wing settles around you like a shroud. Cecile is asleep on her pallet, a small, huddled shape in the darkness. For the first time, you will perform the Dashabelle age, the undressing alone. You want a moment of solitude, a moment to confront the person who lives beneath the layers of artifice. You light a single candle, its small flame flickering and casting long, dancing shadows on the stone walls. One by one, you begin to dismantle the elaborate construction of the courtly lady. First, the heavy silk gown, which you struggle to unhook. It slumps to the floor in a shimmering, expensive pool around your feet. Then, the petticoats, and the absurd, cage-like panniers wishing you a accustomed experience, which you lean against the wall like discarded pieces of architecture. You are left in your corset and chemise. Untying the corset laces yourself is a clumsy, frustrating struggle. You twist and turn, your fingers fumbling with the tight knots. Finally, You manage to loosen them. The relief is instantaneous and overwhelming. You take your first deep, shuddering breath of the day, your lungs expanding into the space that has been denied them for over 12 hours. It's a sensation of freedom so profound it's almost painful. Finally, you stand before your small, polished metal mirror, holding a single candle aloft, and you truly look. You force yourself to see what lies beneath the mask. The person who stares back at you is a stranger you are just beginning to know, and she is showing the signs of the war she is fighting. You take a cloth and, with cold water, begin to scrub away the layers of makeup. The white lead comes off in a pasty, grey sludge, revealing the irritated, damaged skin beneath. There are red patches, dry spots, and the beginnings of what looks like a sore near your hairline. The vibrant, healthy-looking woman from the party is gone, replaced by this pale, blotchy version of yourself. You look at your eyes, shadowed with fatigue. You look at your mouth and see the dark line along your gums, a grim promise of the dental decay to come. This is your true face. This is the face that the king in the court must never see. It is a face of vulnerability, of exhaustion, and of slow, creeping poison. A lesser-known aspect of this nightly ritual was the application of night masks. After scrubbing off the toxic daily makeup, some women would apply a different kind of mask to soothe their ravaged skin. These were often made of ingredients like oatmeal, honey, or almond paste. A particularly bizarre and wealthy option was to sleep in a mask made of raw veal, which was believed to soften the skin and reduce wrinkles. It's a detail that highlights the desperation to undo the damage, to find a miracle cure for the harm they were knowingly inflicting on themselves. The debate among historians and literary scholars sometimes touches upon this double life. The courtly lady had to sell the public, perfect, artificial creation, and the private, decaying, natural woman. The diaries and letters of the period are filled with complaints about mysterious illnesses, headaches, and fatigue. Are these just records of common ailments? Or are they the coded expressions of the psychological and physical toll of living this dual existence? It's impossible to know for sure, but looking at your own reflection, you feel the chasm between your two selves as a physical reality. You blow out the candle and crawl into your cold bed, pulling the heavy curtains shut. In the darkness, you are no longer the glittering, confident courtier. You are just a young woman in a cold room, a long way from home, whose body is slowly being sacrificed for a dream. And as you drift into an uneasy sleep, you can't help but wonder who is the real you, the perfect stranger in the mirror at the party, or the damaged one who haunts the darkness of this room at Versailles. It's a question you are not supposed to ask. The nightly ritual of facing your own decaying reflection becomes a grim routine. But there's another part of the nightly déballage that you've been avoiding. Tonight, you force yourself to confront it. After removing the layers of clothing and makeup, you turn your attention to your head. You sit on the stool, your back to the small mirror, and begin the painstaking process of removing the long, sharp pins that anchor your wig to the linen cap beneath. There are dozens of them, and a few have been driven in so securely that they snag on your real hair, sending a sharp twinge of pain through your scalp. Finally, with a sigh of relief, you are able to lift the entire structure off your head. The weight difference is immediate and startling. It feels as if a great burden has been lifted, not just from your head, but from your entire body. Your neck muscles, tense for hours from balancing the heavy edifice, begin to ache as they relax. You set the wig on its stand, where it sits like a bizarre, headless bust, a silent testament to the day's performance. Then, with a sense of dread, you untie the ribbons of the tight-fitting undercap and pull it off. You run your fingers through your own hair. It feels limp, slightly greasy from being trapped all day, and thin, alarmingly thin. You pick up the mirror and hold it so you can see the back of your head, angling it to catch the candlelight. The sight makes your stomach clench. Your hairline, especially around the forehead and temples where the wig's friction is most constant, is noticeably receding. The hair that remains is sparse and brittle. This is treacherous, a condition caused by the constant pulling and tension on the hair follicles. It's the same reason ballerinas who wear tight buns for years often experience hair loss. For the ladies of Versailles, who wore heavy, tight wigs day in and day out, it was an epidemic. Your once healthy hair is being sacrificed to provide a stable anchor for its magnificent, artificial replacement. Like the lead paint that ruins the skin it's meant to perfect, the wig is destroying the very hair it is supposed to enhance. It's another of the court's vicious cycles. This widespread hair loss is one of the main reasons that wigs became so universally adopted by both men and women in the aristocracy. It wasn't just a fashion choice, it was often a necessity to cover up bald patches and thinning hair caused by a combination of wig wearing, poor nutrition, and diseases like syphilis, which was rampant and often caused hair loss in its later stages. King Louis XIV himself began to go bald at a young age, a fact that helped cement the wig as a symbol of power and virility for men at court. A little known and rather unappealing detail is how they tried to combat this hair loss. The market was flooded with miracle hair tonics and pomades. These were often bizarre and ineffective concoctions. A popular recipe might involve ingredients like boiled southernwood, mixed with oils and animal fats, often bear grease, which was thought to be particularly potent. Some recipes even called for more disturbing ingredients, like distilled snails or the ashes of burnt bees. Women would massage these pungent, greasy salves into their scalps at night, desperate to encourage new growth, staining their pillows and filling their small rooms with strange odors. The historical debate here often revolves around the perception of natural hair. Did the aristocracy come to see wigs as superior to real hair, or was there a sense of loss and regret for their own thinning locks? The evidence suggests a complex attitude. On one hand, the wig was a status symbol, a key part of the fashionable uniform. On the other hand, the frantic market for hair growth potions suggests a deep-seated anxiety about losing one's natural hair. It was a private tragedy concealed by a public triumph of artifice. You stare at the thinning patches on your scalp, a fresh wave of despair washing over you. It's another part of yourself that is being eroded, sacrificed at the altar of Versailles. Your skin is irritated. Your gums are receding. Your hair is falling out. The process of becoming a courtly lady is a process of self-destruction, a slow, methodical dismantling of your natural self. You run your fingers through the thin, lifeless strands. You remember your hair as it was back home, thick, healthy, and shining in the sun. It seems like a memory from another person's life. That girl is gone, and in her place is this creature of the court, who is slowly going bald under her magnificent, powdered wig. You put the mirror down, unable to look any longer. You blow out the candle and retreat into the familiar darkness of your bed. The physical aches of the day, the corsets bite. The wig's weight are nothing compared to this quiet, psychological pain. It's the pain of erasure. Every day, you lose a little more of yourself, and you wonder how much will be left when Versailles is finally done with you. A few weeks later, a chill runs through the court that has nothing to do with the drafty corridors. Past in hushed whispers behind fluttering fans and in the shadowed corners of antechambers, begins to spread like a contagion. The Marquise de Vieuville, a young woman known for her vibrant beauty and her flawless, porcelain complexion, has fallen gravely ill. You hear the news first from your acquaintance, the young lady from the North Wing, during a brief, stolen conversation while waiting for the Queen's procession. They say the physicians have been with her day and night, she whispers, her eyes wide with a mixture of morbid curiosity and genuine fear. They have bled her 3 times, but the fever does not break. Over the next few days, the rumors intensify. Everyone has a theory. It was a tainted oyster. It was a sudden, violent chill caught in the gardens. It was a punishment from God for her rumored affair with a certain duke. But you, and perhaps a few other women who are honest with themselves in the dead of night, suspect the real cause. The Marquise was famous for her dedication to haute royalty. She was never seen with a hair out of place or a blemish visible. Her white foundation was always the thickest, her rouge the most vibrant. She was the epitome of courtly beauty. The gossip takes on a darker, more clinical tone. They say she suffers from terrible fits, her limbs trembling uncontrollably. They say she cries out from the agonizing pains in her belly. They say her teeth have begun to fall out. The symptoms are terrifyingly familiar. They are the symptoms you read in your own body, magnified and accelerated. The tremors in your hand, the colic in your gut, the soreness of your gums. The Marquise is living out the terrifying conclusion to the story your own body has just begun to write. This is how the court deals with the consequences of its own toxic fashions. The slow decay is a private matter, a personal failing, but the final, catastrophic illness becomes a public spectacle, a source of gossip and moralizing. No one dares to speak the truth aloud, to connect the little pots of paint on the dressing table to the deathbed in the gilded apartment. To do so would be to admit that the entire system is built on a beautiful, deadly lie. It would be an indictment of everyone. A lesson in aspect of courtly life was the concept of the belle morte, or the beautiful death. It was considered important for an aristocrat to die well with dignity, piety, and composure, surrounded by family. But for a woman dying of heavy metal poisoning, such a serene end was often impossible. The neurological symptoms, the pain, and the disfigurement made for a messy, terrifying, and deeply undignified death. These realities were often glossed over in the official eulogies, which would speak of a gentle fading, the soul peacefully departing. The gruesome reality was a secret the family would keep. The historical debate on this topic is poignant. How much did they really know? Did the Marquise's family, watching her suffer, make the connection to her cosmetics? Did her friends, who used the same products, feel a chill of self-recognition? It's what historians call strategic ignorance. It's possible, even likely, that on some level they understood the danger. But the social and psychological mechanisms of denial were too powerful. It was easier to blame a mysterious fever than to confront the fact that they were all, to some degree, complicit in her death. A week later, the whispers turned to pronouncements. The Marquise de Vieuville is dead. The court officially goes into mourning. Everyone dons black, the vibrant silks and brocades replaced with somber velvets. But it is a performative grief. Underneath the veneer of sadness, there is a palpable sense of fear and a grim, unspoken lottery. The Marquise has quietly withered and fallen. As the popular euphemism goes, a spot in the court's hierarchy has opened up. A room in a more desirable wing is now available. Her tragic end becomes, for others, an opportunity. That night, as you sit before your mirror, you stare at the pots of white lead and red mercury. They seem more malevolent than ever before. They are not just cosmetics, they are weapons. The Marquise is a ghost at your shoulder, a cautionary tale. Her fate is a stark reminder of the true cost of the game you are playing. You think of her, a beautiful young woman slowly poisoned by her own vanity and the relentless pressures of this golden world. Her death will not change anything. Tomorrow, the ladies of the court will still paint their faces. They will still cinch their corsts. They will still balance their towering wigs. The great, tittering machine of Versailles will continue to turn, grinding up the health and lives of those caught in its gears, and you are one of them. The fear you feel is cold and sharp. For the first time, you're not just afraid of failing. You're afraid of succeeding. The mourning period for the Marquise is brief, a temporary pause in the relentless rhythm of the court. The black clothes are soon put away, and the vibrant, competitive pageantry of daily life resumes. But for you, something has irrevocably shifted. The ghost of the Marquise lingers, a silent companion in the gilded hallways. Her fate has illuminated the final, terrible truth of Versailles. This beautiful world is a lottery, and the price of a winning ticket might be your life. You stand by one of the tall windows in the Hall of Mirrors, looking out over the impossibly vast and geometric gardens. The sun is setting, casting long, Dramatic shadows across the manicured lawns and fountains. The sky is streaked with pink and gold, a reflection of the palace itself. It's a scene of breathtaking, almost heartbreaking beauty. You watch the other courtiers, performing their daily promenade. You see the flutter of their fans, the rustle of their silk gowns, the serene, painted masks they wear. From a distance, they are a perfect picture, a living painting by Watteau. But you can no longer see them without seeing what lies beneath. You see the tight corsets restricting their breath, the heavy wigs causing their hair to thin, the toxic makeup eating away at their skin. You see the constant, low-grade anxiety in their eyes, the desperate hope for a glance from the king, the fear of a misstep that could lead to ruin. This is the golden cage in its twilight. The initial awe and excitement you felt upon your arrival have curdled into a weary, cynical understanding. You came here seeking honor for your family, seeking a place in the glorious world of the Sun King. You have learned the rules. You have played the game. You have worn the uniform. But you now understand the cost in a way you never could have imagined. You touch your own face, feeling the familiar, tight layer of lead paint. You are acutely aware of the dull throb in your head, the slight tremor in your fingers that has become your constant companion. You are on the same path as the mercuries. Perhaps your constitution is stronger. Perhaps you are more moderate in your application of the poisons, but the path leads to the same destination. The central historical question that haunts this entire era, the one historians will never definitively answer, is simple: was it worth it? Did these women, and the men as well, make a conscious calculation? Did they weigh the physical pain, the financial ruin, the loss of health, and the constant, grinding stress against the rewards of proximity to power, the thrill of royal favor, and the glory of being a part of the most magnificent court in the world? Or was it a more subtle trap, a slow immersion into a culture where the abnormal becomes normal, and the price is only ever calculated in hindsight, when it is already too late? You look at your reflection, a ghostly image superimposed over the setting sun in the mirror. You see the perfect, artificial creature you have become. She is a survivor. She knows how to navigate the treacherous waters of the court. She can speak the silent languages of the fun and the beauty pact. She can endure the pain of her costume and the boredom of the endless rituals. She has succeeded. But as you look at her, you also see the provincial girl you left behind. The girl with the healthy hair and the unpainted face, who could run through a field and take a deep, genuine breath of fresh air. You have traded her, piece by piece, for this glittering, fragile substitute. The decision you face is no longer about how to succeed at Versailles, but whether to continue playing the game at all. Do you stay, embracing the risks, hoping to climb higher, to secure a prestigious marriage, to win a pension for your family, all while your body slowly betrays you? Or do you find a way to leave, to retreat back to the provinces, to a life of relative obscurity and health? To leave would be to admit defeat, to bring shame and disappointment to your family. To stay could be a death sentence. The sun dips below the horizon, and the servants begin to move through the hall, lighting the hundreds of candles and the crystal chandeliers. The hall of mirrors ignites, transformed from a sunlit marvel into a glittering, magical nighttime world. The performance is not over, it is simply entering its next act. You smooth down your heavy silk skirt, adjust the lace at your elbow, and raise your fan. For tonight, you will continue to play your part. You will smile your tight, painted smile and glide through the golden light. You are a part of the spectacle, a beautiful, perfect cog in the magnificent, deadly machine of Versailles. The choice can wait for the morning. For now, the candles are lit, and the show must go on. The dust motes dance in the faint moonlight filtering through your window, each one a tiny, forgotten story from a long-ago world. The rustle of silk has faded now, and the heavy scent of perfume has given way to the quiet, familiar air of your own room. The grand, golden Palace of Versailles dissolves into the soft edges of a dream, its glittering halls and shadowed corners receding into the quiet dark. You can feel the weight of the wig lifting from your head, the pressure of the corset easing from around your ribs. You can take a deep, slow breath, feeling your lungs fill with the calm, clean air of the present moment. The aches and anxieties of the court, the constant performance, the fear and the ambition, all begin to melt away, like tallow from a snuff candle, leaving only a gentle stillness behind. The faces of the courtiers, with their painted masks and watchful eyes, blur and soften, their whispered secrets dissolving into the low, steady hum of the fan in your own room. You are floating away from that world now, drifting on a slow, quiet river that leads to the shores of sleep. The intricate rules of etiquette, the weight of history, the silent, tragic stories. You can let them all go. They are just echoes now, faint and far away. There is only the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, a soft and steady beat in the peaceful silence of the night. You are safe now, far from the golden cage, wrapped in the quiet comfort of your own bed, on the very edge of a deep and restorative dream. The end of the article. Good night.